President, I rise today as the Senate considers an issue that is critically important to agriculture and to rural America. It is my hope that the Senate will advance landmark legislation that I, along with a bipartisan group of colleagues, have introduced in response to the U.S. Environmental Protection Agency's final rule that redefines waters of the United States, commonly referred to in farm country as WOTUS, among other acronyms, under the Clean Water Act. I am proud to be an original co-sponsor of S. 1140 and represent agriculture and rural America's charge in pushing back against EPA's egregious federal overregulation. EPA's final WOTUS rule would adversely impact a vast cross-section of industries, including agriculture. And as I have said before, I fear that the sheer number of regulations imposed by this administration is causing the public to lose faith in our government. Too often I hear from my constituents that they feel ruled and not governed. Mr. President, S. 1140 is in response to exactly that sentiment. As chairman of the Agriculture Committee, I have heard directly from farmers, ranchers, state agency officials, various industries in Kansas and all throughout our country that ultimately would be subject to these new burdensome and costly federal requirements. Mr. President, the message is unanimous and clear. This is the wrong approach and the wrong rule for agricultural rural America and our small communities. According to the Kansas Department of Agriculture, EPA's final rule would expand the number of water bodies in Kansas classified as waters of the U.S., of the United States, subject to all Clean Water Act programs and requirements by 460%, totaling 170,000 stream miles. This is just incredulous. The expanded scope will further exacerbate the burden of duplicative pesticide permitting requirements and the other overregulation by this administration. This simply is not going to work and makes zero sense, especially in places like arid western Kansas. Furthermore, the final rule undercuts the state's sovereign ability as the primary regulator of water resources who administers and carries out Clean Water Act programs. Even more troubling, in recent months, it has become apparent through the release of internal government documents between the EPA and the U.S. Army Corps of Engineers that there are serious concerns and questions with regard to the legality of EPA's role and actions during the famous or infamous public comment period to garner support for the final rule. The tactics employed by the EPA throughout this rulemaking process completely undermines the integrity and interagency review process and the public trust. The EPA claims that they have listened to farmers and ranchers about their concerns they have raised. EPA not only stacked the deck against farmers and ranchers, EPA deliberately ignored them. This bill requires the EPA and the Army Corps of Engineers to withdraw the final rule, craft a new rule, in meaningful consultation with stakeholders, state partners, and regulated entities who are ready and waiting to work with EPA if we can. Mr. President, all of us want to protect clean water. No one here, especially agriculture, wants to threaten such a valuable and integral natural resource that sustains our livelihood. It's our water. It is time that the administration listen and develop a rule that is effective for farmers, ranchers, and rural America. This WOTUS regulation is the #1 concern I hear about in farm country, that the Agriculture Committee hears about. And over 90 agriculture groups, 90, have signed a letter in support of this legislation. Additionally, ongoing litigation involves 31 states challenging the final rule, only adds further confusion about implementation and applicability of the final rule across the rest of the country. It's time for Congress to intervene. I thank my colleagues who have joined me in this effort, more especially the senator from Wyoming, and I urge all of my colleagues to support S. 1140 and vote yes. I yield my time.
Mr. President.